Today's daf is Yevamos daf Hey, and we are at the very top line of daf Hey Amud Aleph Teinach. Today's daf is being learned Le'ilui Nishmas Shlomo ben Yibadol L'chaim Toivim Reb Chaim Doiv, and as a schus refuah shalema for Avadia ben Miriam Leah, Moshe Abba ben Devora bas Mecha, Shmuel ben Tehila, Elazar Lipa Shalom ben Feger Rachel, Sarah Nechama bas Rus Malka, Baruch ben Rachel, Malka Miriam bas Esther, and Esther Kreindel bas Devora. Today's daf is also being learned Le'ilui Nishmas Doiv Beryl ben Reb Yaakov David. So we're in the midst of a little bit of a digression, and that is the 3+ dafin tucked away in the beginning of Masechtas Yevamos that deal with the halachos of asay, doicha, lois asay. And the first daf Dalid, discuss the source, the makar. Everyone knows the halacha, zeh klal gadol bedin, that asay is doicha, lois asay. But the question is, what is the makar? And the Gemara fleshed it out in an entire daf in Shas, and the Maskana, the Gemara said that the makar is we darshan smuchim. It says in the Torah loisil bashatnis, the lois asay of shatnis, the samach lei, and the very next pasuk gedilim tasalach, which means there's a mitzvah for a yid to have tzitzis on the corner of his bag. It says the Gemara, what's the connection? What's the shaykhis? Why would the Torah juxtapose these two seemingly completely disparate laws? It's obviously coming to teach us something, and that is that if a person finds himself in a situation where there's a baguette in front of him, if he wears the baguette, he'll be mekayim the mitzvah of tzitzis, but at the same time he'll violate the lois asay of loisil bashatnis. What should he do? Should he say there's a mitzvah of tzitzis and that will be doicha the lav of shatnis? Or should he say there's a lav of shatnis and that's doicha the mitzvah of tzitzis? Al zen nemar, the smuchim between loisil bashatnis and gedilim tasalach to teach us that gedilim tasalach is what trumps. This is the makar to the halacha of asay doicha lois asay. But the Gemara continued. The Gemara said that even though we do find a man Damar and Shas, Rabbi Yehuda, who is not doirish smuchim, he holds that you can darshan the Torah using the Yud Gimel Midas Shat Torah Nidrashas Behem, maybe the Lamed Beis Midas Shat Torah Nidrashas Behem, but smuchim is not something that gives you a right to darshan something on the level where we're going to learn halachas that have real bona fide ramifications. But even that shitas, Rabbi Yehuda agrees that in Mishnah Torah, in Sefer Dvarim, you could darshan smuchim, and being that loisil bashatnes and gedilim tasalach apsukim and parshas vaykiseitze, which is in Mishnah Torah, so says the Gemara, aliba de kuli alma. There's no one that's not going to hold that you can't darshan smuchim, and as a result, this is the makar aliba de kola tanoim v'kola amoyram to the klal of asay doicha lois asay. Stating that, the Gemara had a little bit of an arichas, and that is because the Gemara said that although it's true, Rabbi Yehuda holds that you could darshan smuchim in Mishnah Torah, but the only time you could darshan smuchim in Mishnah Torah is if the smuchim is either muchach or it's muf. Muchach means there's some hoichacha, there's some raglayim l'davar that the Torah wants you to darshan smuchim, because otherwise the Torah wouldn't have written the psukim in the location that it wrote the psukim. Mufta means that there's something extra. Maybe the whole pasuk's extra, maybe a word is extra, but there's something extra. When there's either a muchach or a mufna, that's when, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you're able to darshan smuchim. So the Gemara said, if we're going to darshan the smuchim of loisil bashatnes and gedilim tasalach to teach us hazak reisa alacha of esed doicha loisa, they say obviously it must be either muchach or mufna, and the Gemara said it is. In fact, it's muchach and it's mufna. What's the muchach? Because although the Torah wanted to say the pasuk gedilim tasalach, and we learn very important halachas, as we're going to see later in the daf, from Gedilim Tasalach. But at the same time, wouldn't it have made more sense to write Gedilim Tasalach in the same place that the Torah wrote the Iker Parsha of Tzitzis? The Iker Parsha of Tzitzis is not in Sefer Dvarim, it's in Bamidbar, it's in Parsha Shlach. We say it every day when we say Kriya Shema, and it's there, l'chura, that the Torah should have wrote the words Gedilim Tasalach. Why did the Torah write it in Parshas Kisei? It's muchach, says the Gemara, that there's some drasha going on over here. It's the darshan smuchim. And the Gemara said that it's mufni as well. Where is a mufni? So the Gemara, the Maskana, said, because when the Torah mentions the Isra of Shatnes, it says, Loisul Bashatnes, Tsemer ufishtim yachtav. And the Gemara says the word Tsemer ufishtim are extra. What do you mean it's extra? It's the only place in the Torah that it says that shatnez means Tsemer ufishtim. So the Gemara says the reason it's extra is because there's really another pasuk in the Torah that talks about the Isra shatnez. It says Uveged kalayim shatnez lo yalo alecha. The word beged, according to Tana Devei Rabbi Yishmael, always means Tsemer ufishtim. So from that pasuk, I already know that shatnez is Tsemer ufishtim. If that's the case, why would the Torah have written Tsemer ufishtim by the lois aseh of leisil b'shatnez to create a mufna to give me now the basis to be able to darshan smuchim? Zok the Gemara. Gemara, the makar ta'aseh doicha lois aseh is the smichos. It's the smuchim between loisil b'shanes and gdilim taslach. And loimi baya, according to the shitas that always darshan smuchim. But even the shita that doesn't always darshan smuchim, Rabbi Yehuda, over here it's Mishnah Torah and it's muchach and mufna, which by the way you don't need both, but happens to be muchach and mufna. Because it's muchach and mufna, you're able to darshan smuchim, and it's for that reason, says the Gemara, we have a makar to the klal of aseh doicha lois aseh, stating that today's daf is going to very much pick up on this note, and that is Teinach l'Tana d'vei Rabbi Yishmael. What we just said is good according to Tana d'vei Rabbi Yishmael. But according to the Rabbanan that argue with Tana d'vei Rabbi Yishmael, what's the makar to aseh doicha lois aseh? So who's the Tana d'vei Rabbi Yishmael? Tana d'vei Rabbi Yishmael is the one that holds that wherever it says in the Torah beged, it means either it's semer or fish. What does Tana d'vei Rabbi Yishmael have to do with the makar to esen doicha lois aseh? Because when the Gemara was discussing that the smuchim is going to work even according to Rabbi Yehuda, because even though Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold of smuchim, but in Mishnah Torah does when it's muchach or mufna. So the Gemara made the point that it's muchach and mufna. Where do you see it's mufna? Because the word semer ufishtim in the lav of leisil b'shatnez are extra. Why is it extra? Because it says already uveged k'layim shatnez loyalu alecha, and veged anyway means semer ufishtim. So that knech in the sugya only worked according to Tana d'vei Rabbi Yishmael. So if that knech only worked according to Tana d'vei Rabbi Yishmael, says the Gemara, according to the Rabbanan that argue with Tana d'vei Rabbi Yishmael minalu, what's going to be the makar ta'aseh doicha lois aseh? That's the Gemara's kasha. Now, what's the obvious kasha on the Gemara's kasha? You can't even go weiter without speaking this out. Makshim Rishonim, all the Rishonim ask this kasha, that in the cheshbon of the Gemara, what's the Gemara asking? At the end of the day, the Gemara said that if you darshan smuchim, you can learn aseh doicha lois aseh from loisil b'shatnez and gdilim tasalach. Even if you don't darshan smuchim, you can learn aseh doicha lois aseh from the smuchim between loisil b'shatnez and gdilim tasalach, because the psukim were written in Mishnah Torah, and in Mishnah Torah everybody darshan smuchim. Now the Gemara said, is it true that we always darshan in Mishnah Torah smuchim if you usually don't darshan smuchim? Gemara said no, but if it's either muchach or it's mufna, you do. Now the Gemara said, it just so happens, this is muchach and it's mufna. It's muchach because the Torah could have written Gedilim Tasalach in Parashat Shlach, and it's mufna because the word semer ufishtim is extra. So, fragging the Rishonim, it's true that the fact that semer ufishtim is mufna is only true aliba the Tana d'vei Rabbi Yishmael. So, when the Gemara said Iba Yisema Mishum the Mufna, that only works with Tana d'vei Rabbi Yishmael. But the Cholkim on Tana d'vei Rabbi Yishmael, they're going to have to stand on the side. They're going to have to say, I acknowledge this doesn't work according to me. But does that mean that the whole sugya fell apart? No, because if you darshan smuchim, you have a makar, and even if you don't darshan smuchim, it's muchach. So at the end of the day, we have the Gemara. When the Gemara said Iba Yisema Mishum the Muchach, Iba Yisema Mishum the Mufni, it was l'rav chedemilsa. The Gemara was saying it's both muchach and mufna. But at the end of the day, it is muchach. So if it's muchach, even if it's not mufna, you have a very, very good makar. So the Rishonim grapple and they struggle and they mutcha very, very much. Pashat had to understand the Gemara's kasha in the opening line of the daf. Teinach the Tana d'vei Rabbi Yishmael, the Rabbanan minalu. What happened according to the Rabbanan? One wrinkle in the sugya we don't have. One iba yisema, literally. But the whole sugya we do have. Either way, I am Rishonim, but we're going to pashat learn the Gemara. So again, the Gemara's kasha is that being that according to the Rabbanan that argue with Tana d'vei Rabbi Yishmael, Tzemer Ufishtim is not mufna, so the Gemara feels that it needs to find another makar to the halacha of Hasnei Doicha Lois Aseh. So says the Gemara, what is the makar? Nafkalu mi roishai. They learn it from the word roish. The Tanya, we learned in a brayse, roishai matal loymar. Now the context over there is Parshas Mitzayra, and it's discussing the Mitzayra, where during his tahira process, one of the things he had to do was, he had to shave all the hair on his head. So he had to have no hair on his body. Included in that is the hair of his head, the hair of his beard, gabais einov. But at the end of the day, kol sa'ad, right? He had to cut all the hair on his head. Says the Gemara, if he had to cut all the hair on his body, so why would the Torah single out Roshai? Again, the Mitzvah had to cut all the hair on his body. Yet the Torah singles out the hair on his head and the hair on his beard and gabais einov. So the Bryce over here is discussing why would the Torah mention the hair on certain body parts if in reality he has to cut all the hair on his body anyways. So the Gemara says, because it says in the pasuk, Lo yisakifu pas roishchem. We know there's an issur for a yid to cut pas roishchem. He's not allowed to cut the peya of his head. So Shemei, I would have thought Af Mitzayra came. That maybe a Mitzayra is also not allowed to cut the peya on his head. Talmud Loymar. It's for that reason that the Torah said roishai, to teach us that the Mitzayra is allowed to violate the lav in the Torah of Lo yisakifu pas roishchem. parenthetically says the Gemara, v'kasaver haytana, obviously the Tana, this brisa holds, that akafas kol harosh mahakafat, that if a person would cut all the hair on his head, not just the payas, he would also violate the lav of leisakifu pas roishchem. This is a machloikis and a sugya in Mesachtes Makis, whether when it says in the Torah leisakifu pas roishchem doesn't mean that the person's only not allowed to cut the payas, but if he cuts all the hair on his head, it's not going to be a problem? Or does it mean that you're not allowed to cut your payas even if you're going to cut all the hair on your head? Meaning there's a mandama that holds that if a person would cut all his hair, then it wouldn't be a problem. The issue is only when he leaves hair on his head, but he only cuts the payas. Now the Mitzayru cut all the hair on his head. So if you're telling me that you need a pasuk, Roishay, to tell me that it's okay for the Mitzayru to do it, because otherwise you would have thought he's being over the Leisaseh of Leisakifu Pas Roishchem, Zoisei Meres, the Tana obviously holds that for a person to cut all the hair is a violation of the lav of Isser Peyes, meaning Kasavra Aitana, Hakafas Koloroich Ma'akafa. But what's the bottom line? It says in the Torah the word Roish. We're in the parish of Mitzayra to teach me what? That a Mitzayra who cuts all the hair on his body is supposed to cut the hair of his head, specifically the payas, even though there's a lav in the Torah, Leisakifu Pas Roishchem, which in Mamalushan means that the asay of Mitzayra is doicha the Leisasay of Leisakifu Pas Roishchem. So Zok the Gemara, this is the Makar, or this is going to be another makar to the halacha that I say is deichalois I say. So even if you're a chayli kanton Rabbi Shmuel and you don't have tzemru fishtim mufna, so memela somehow you can learn out from the smuchim between shatnez and tzitzis. But at the end of the day, zok the gemara chavnacha makar. I have a makar from the fact that the asay of Mitzayra is doicha the lois nasay of leisakifu pas reishchem. But the gemara says iklam refach. He can use this as a makar to kol ha'Torah kula. Why? Because mal lav dakofish came lav shein shava bakal. The lav of leisakifu pas reishchem, even though it's a very high legal loisaseh, but at the same time, it's actually a very shvacha loisaseh. And the reason is because it's einoi shava bakoil. Because it's not something that relates to all people. Only men have an isser to cut their payas, but women do not have an isser for them to cut the payas. And being that it's a lav she'enoi shava bakoil, it's true that you see from here that aseh is doicha loisaseh she'enoi shava bakoil. But you don't see from here that a loisaseh would be doicha, an ordinary loisaseh, a loisaseh that is shava bakoil. So the Gemara says, this can't be the makar to aseh doicha loisaseh and kol ha'Torah ela zok. The Gemara asim niskaneh. You learn it from skaneh. The Tanya we learned to the Beis, skaneh matam aloymen. So talking about the same pasuk. We're discussing the Mitzayru who had to cut all the hair on his body. And the pasuk singles out that he had to cut the hair on his head, and in this brisa he had to cut the hair on his beard. So says the brisa, why did the Torah mention that the Mitzayra cuts the hair on his beard? Because it says in the Torah, ufas sekonam lo yigalechu. Now this pasuk of ufas sekonam lo yigalechu is in Parshas Emor. It's talking about the kohen, that the kohen is not allowed to cut the payah of his beard. Now, just to be clear, when it says pas konam lo yigalechu, it doesn't mean kipshutai that kohen is not allowed to shave his beard. What it means is he's not allowed to shave his beard with a razor, whatever a razor is, but that's what he's not allowed to shave his beard with. Not just that, the Isser is not exclusive to a Kohen. This is really true for all Yidden as well. Stating that the pasuk that the Brisa is discussing is the pasuk that it says by Kohanim. It's going to be important in the cheshbon of the Gemara. I am Rishonim, why the Brisa was picking on the pasuk that it says by Kohanim, because really it's not exclusive to Kohanim. It's true for all Yidden. But again, says the Gemara, you want to know why the Torah had to single out that the Mitzayra is allowed to cut the hair on his beard? Because really there's a lois nasei of a pasuk. I would have thought Afkai Mitzayra Kain, that if you have a Mitzayra that happens to be a Kohen, he's bound by the lav of Upas Kanam Lo Yigalechu. Again, we're talking about the pasuk that's talking to Kohanim. So if that's the case, you would think the Mitzayra shouldn't do it. So therefore the Torah said Skanai to teach me that the asay of Tiglachas Mitzayra, the asay of the Mitzayra cutting his hair is doicha the lois asay of Upas Kanam Lo Yigalechu. So you see clearly asay is doicha lois. The Mitzayra has an asay to cut the hair on his body, and he has a lois asay to cut the hair on his beard. Ufas kanam lo yigalechu. Asay is going to be doicha lois. Now, what are you going to tell me? How could this be the makar? It's the same lav she'enu shava bakail. Why? Because women don't have the isser ufas kanam lo yigalechu. Just like they don't have the isser of leisakifu pas roishchem, they also don't have the isser ufas kanam lo yigalechu. So what did we fadin? We already have a makar that asay is doicha lav she'enu shava bakail. I need another makar that asay is doicha lav she'enu shava bakail. Continues the Gemara, I don't need another makar to teach me that I say is doicha. Why not? Because I know that already from Roisha. So Roisha already taught me not just that the Mitzayra is allowed to cut his payas. It taught me a klal gadol badin that I say is doicha lois asay sheinu shava bakal. So once I know that I say is doicha lois asay sheinu shava bakal, I know that there's going to be no iser with a pas kanam lo yigalechu either. So why would the Torah have to tell me skanei? So skanei is weiter extra. Why are we assuming it's extra? Because What's it teaching me? I know that the Mitzayra cuts all the hair on his body. Oh, so you have a makar. It's teaching me that even if he's a kohen, you don't have the isser of upas ganim loigalecho. I know that from Roshai. So again, skana is vayta extra. So it's obviously coming to teach me something. And if I don't need it to teach me, lav she'en shava bakol, t'nei yawinyan, this is a midah that Chazal darshaned often, that the lav shava bakol, to teach me that if it's a lav shava bakol, that asay is going to be doicha. So says the Gemara, you want to know the makar, that asay can be doicha, or lois asay, that's shava bakol. The makar is from the fact that it says Roshai and Zekanai. Roshai teaches me asay is doicha lav she'en shava bakol. Skanai then teaches me that asay is doicha lav that's shava bakol. I skanai is a lav that's ein shava bakol. It's true, but im einoi inyan lav she'en shava bakol. Tenei yawin lav shava bakol. But the Gemara says no. Vakati yitzrich. I still need it. It's not true. Loilam, I'll tell you, Zekanai is not coming to teach me that asay is doicha lav she'en shava bakol. Rather, it's only coming to teach me that it's doicha lav she'ein shava bakol. What's the kash? I already know that I say is doicha lav she'ein shava bakol from Roshai. What do I need skanai? I'll tell you why I need it. It's derech. So good. I would have thought shani kohanim hayu v'nibim and akasim mitzvahs yiseres, because kohanim are different. When it comes to Torah and mitzvahs, kohanim are in a league of their own. So I would have thought that being that you find so many mitzvahs regarding kohanim, so afilu lav she'ein shava bakol loidachi. So you would have thought that maybe his lav of upas kanim loigalech was more chomer than an ordinary lav, and as a result, even when it's ein shava bakol, asay can't be doicha. So although it's true that the asay of mitzayra can be doicha the lav of payas, but it's not muchach that it can be doicha the lav of paskan loicha, which is a koyin the lav shein shava bakol. Kamash malon dachi. That's why I need a pasuk to tell me that it's doicha. But the bottom line is, I can't learn asay doicha lois asay hashava bakol from roisha, and I can't learn asay doicha lois asay hashava bakol from skane. So what's the makar? So the Gemara says, "Alasi me roisha dahachtana." We're going to learn it from roisha, the same word roisha. Roisha that it says by Mitzayra, but not using the drasha of the brisa that the Gemara brought on top of the Amud, but based on a drasha that was stated by a different brisa. He darshaned the word Roisha differently, and based on that Tana's drasha, what's going to emerge is a makar, maybe, to the fact that asay is doicha lois asay. So who's this other Tana? The Tanya we learned to the Brayso. Roishay mat hamadayim. Again, it's all the same pasuk. The Roishay, the Skanai, and now Roishay it's in Tzvaitamul. It's all the same pasuk in Parashas Mitzayra that's talking about a Mitzayra that has a mitzvah. Part of his Mitzayra to cut all the hair on his body, and then the Torah singles out Roishai, and we're coming to Darshan. It's obviously extra, it's coming to teach me something. So again, what was the first Bryce's drasha? It's l'rabbis, it's a chiddush to teach me that you can even cut the pace. You would have thought, not Kamash one that you can cut the pace. This Bryce, this Tana had a different formulation. He said, Roishai, mat hamadayim. Why is it saying the Torah Roishai? The fusion, it says, Tar lo yaver al Roishai. It says regarding the Nazir, Tar lo yaver al Roishai. A Nazir has to let his hair grow. He's not allowed to cut his hair. Man, I would have thought af mitzvah for Nazir. So if you have someone that's a Nazir and it's a mitzvah, so even though the mitzvah has a mitzvah to cut his hair, but he's a Nazir. If he's a Nazir, Tar lo yaver al Roishai. Talmud lo ma Roishai. That's why it said in the Torah Roishai to teach me that the asay of mitzvah is doicha the lois asay of Nazir. Zok the Gemara. This then will be the makar that I say is doicha lois asay. Now there's machlokes rishonim harolim sham in the Gemara. Rashi, who's usually the pashup shah, is mefarish the Gemara one way. We're going to learn the way some of the other rishonim learn. I am b'taisus rosh and some of the other rishonim, and that is the Gemara holds that a nazir is not a lav she'ina shava bakol. A nazir is a lav that's shava bakol. The reason is because even though not everyone is a nazir, but anyone could become a nazir. A man could be a nazir, a woman could become a nazir. Any person can become a nazir. And because any person can become a nazir, so the lav of nazirus is a lav shava bakol. Rashi learns the Gemara that really nazir is a lav she'ina shava bakol, and Rashi makes a little bit of a cheshbon to explain what the Gemara means when now it's bringing in nazir. But the bottom line is we'll learn al derech hayoser pashat, which is that nazir really is a lav shava bakol. So it's a lav shava bakol. Zok the Gemara, here's my makar. It says roisha. And Rosh is not coming to teach me that the asay of mitzvah is doicha the lav of payas. That wouldn't help me because that's a lav she'ina shava bakol. It's coming to teach me that it's doicha the lav of nazir. The lav of nazir is a lav hashava bakol. So I have a makar that asay is doicha lois asay. But the Gemara says ikla mifrach. I still have a perchus. Mal nazir mitzvah a nazir shekin yeshnoi b'she'ela. Naziros the lav has a kula. The kula is you can always go to a Talmud Chacham, you can go to a Bezdin, Shimun or Rabboisai, Mutalach, and you can go ahead and you can be Matin in Naziros. And being that you can be Matin in Naziros, so the Issa Naziros, even when you're not Matir it, is considered to be Kolish. It's considered to be qualitatively a little bit of a Shvacha Isser. Any Isser that you have the ability to make go away, even when it's there and you didn't make it go away, but in the world of What's more common and more kal, we look at it as a davar kal. So if that's the case, I can't learn from here that asay is always going to be deichel lois asay, because it can only be deichel lois asay of nazirus maybe, which has the skula that it's yeshna b'sheila. And the Gemara says, I'll prove to you that yeshna b'sheila is a zach. I'll prove to you it's a svart. If you're going to tell me there's no such svar of yeshna b'sheila, we know that although asay is deichel lois asay, but it's not deichel lois asay v'asay. So again, if a person is posed with a dilemma, if I do this, I'm a kaim asay, but if I do this, I'm over a lois asay. Asay deichel lois asay. But what if I do this, I'm a kaim and asay, but if I do this, I'll be over a lois asay and I'll be over an asay. Al zen nemar, ein asay deichel lois asay v'asay. Freit the Gemara, why? Li gomer min nazir. We should learn from nazir, because if you see from nazir that the asay of mitzayra is deichel the lois asay of nazirus, that means that you also see from nazir that asay of mitzayra can be doicha lois asay v'asay. And the reason is because just like a nazir has a lois asay of the tar lo yaver al roishoy, there's also an asay of kadosh yiyeh gadol pera. So there's also an asay. So nazirus is really a lois asay v'asay. So the Gemara says, if you really think that you can learn asay deichel lois asay from nazirus, you're going to have a much bigger problem. We're going to have a much longer sugya, because then you're going to have to figure out why asay is not deichel lois asay v'asay. Because mimakim shabasa that asay is deichel lois asay, you have a hechrach that asay is deichel lois asay v'asay. Ela must be min azar my time legamin. Why don't we hold asay deichel lois asay v'asay? The asay of mitzayr is deichel the lois asay v'asay of nazar. The ikla mifrach because there's a percha she can yeshna b'sheilo. Hachinabi snotu here ikla mifrach she can yeshna b'sheilo. Here too, yeshna b'sheila. Bottom line is, the Gemara just went through a short Geshmaka Amud Gemara, trying to find another makar to asay deichel lois asay. That, according to the Rabbanan, who argue with Tani Rabbi Shmuel, who hold that the word semer of fishtim and the lav of shatnez and parshas kisei are not mufna. For whatever reason, I am b'rishayim, that somehow spurred this sugya, where we need to find another source to the idea of asay deichel lois asay. First, the Gemara thought you can learn it from the fact that the asay of mitzayr is deichel the lois asay of lois akifu bas roishchem. Then the Gemara thought maybe you can learn it from the fact that the asay of mitzayr is deichel the lois asay of upas sekonam lo yigalechu. Then the Gemara thought that maybe you can learn it from the fact that the asay of mitzayr is deichel the lois asay of the nazar of tar lo yaver al roishoy. But after further review, the Gemara says none of those mekayres are really good mekayres. So if that's the case, Hadra Kushtu L'Dochte, according to the Rabbanan, who argue with Tanit Rabbi Shmuel, who don't hold that wherever it says in the Torah, beggar means semer of fish, which means the Torah really never said the fact that shatnez is semer of fish, which means the Torah very much had to say like silba shatnez semer of fish yachdav. So the word semer of fish and anam mufna, if it's not mufna, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that doesn't darshan smuchim and Mishnah Torah, how would he know that asay is doichel lois asay zochim eloi la mikra kam? Really, we're going to go back to the fact that there's a smuchim, and really it is going to be mufna. We said it's not mufna because we need semer of fish. There's something else that's mufna. Imkei lema krot tzitzis tasalach gedilim lamali. Why did Torah write gedilim tasalach? It should have said tzitzis tasalach. Why did Torah write gedilim? It says tzitzis throughout the parsha of tzitzis. So why here in parshas Kisei would the Torah write the word gedilim? Shmami no lafnuye. The word gedilim is considered extra, and it's coming to teach me what? The fact that you should kedash and smuchim. So even according to Rabbanan that are chaylik with Tanit Rabbi Shmuel, and they don't hold that semer of fishtim is extra, is mufna, but at the same time there is another extra word, and the other extra word is the word gedilim. Faith the Gemara, it's not true. Gedilim is not extra. The Torah had to say the word gedilim. We learn halachas and hilchas tzitzis from gedilim. Shiur hu. It actually teaches me the halacha that tzitzis has to be 8 strings on each corner. What's the makar to this? It says gedil. Or it could have said gedil. And gedil would mean shnayim. Why? Because gedil doesn't just mean strings. It means braided strings. You don't braid 1 string, you braid 2 strings. So gedil by definition is 2. Gedilim is gedil times 2. It's Lashon Rabim is arba. Asay gedil ufaisleo mitoicha. What do you see ufaisleo mitoicha? Because just like it says gedilim tasalach, it also says v'nasnu al tzitzis akanov psil techelas. Psil means that the string should be hanging. Gedilim means there should be 2 braided strings. 2 braided strings means really 4. 4 hanging means that you're going to cut the 4 into 8. The bottom line is, we learned the makar of 8. We're not learning hilchos tzitzis now, but this is the super short version of the makar to the shiur of how you know you're supposed to have 8 strings. So the Gemara says, gedilim is definitely not extra. I need gedilim to teach me halacha. That can't be the mufna, that's the makar. Somehow for us to darshan smuchim. Imkain, the Gemara says, no, it's not true. Because makra, I'll tell you what the smuchim is. What the mufna is. It could have said, like silba shatnez, semeru fishtim, yachtov lamali. Oh, maybe that's the extra word. Maybe the extra word is not semeru fishtim. You're right. I need it. If you don't hold like Tana Rabbi Shmuel, Beged doesn't mean Tzemra Fishlim, so I need to know Tzemra Fishlim. Gedilim? No, that's how I know 8 strings. So that's not going to be the Makar. You know what's extra Yachtov? Loisil B'Shana, Tzemra Fishlim, Yachtov? What is Yachtov coming to teach me? Shmami no lafnu. Maybe that's the extra, but the Gemara says, no, Katami Bayole. I need it. This is Shatnez 101. L'toichiv shtei tchifo is chibor, v'tchiva abasei chibor. The halach is that if somebody sews 2 stitches of Tzemra Fishlim together, he's over this as Shatnez. Oh, but Kifa achas, only 1 stitch, it's not a chibor. And you know I know that? From the word Yachtov. Yachtov means they're one, and one means shteit kifa is, and one kifa is not going to be one. So Yachtov is not extra. So the Gemara says, I hear, in kain lichtev rachmano leisilbash semer ufishtem Yachtov, shatnez normally. It's the word shatnez. Shatnez is a word that I don't need. Shmam, you know, why the Torah word, the word shatnez, must be lafnuye, that's what the extra word is going to be. So the Gemara, the word shatnez is lafnuye, what? I very much need the word shatnez to teach me, achi yeshua, Tavi v'nu. So I need the word shatnez, and I need the word shatnez to teach me that it has to be shua, it has to be tavi, it has to be noise. So what do these 3 things mean? Shua means first you have to smooth out the tzemer and the fishtin. Tavi means it has to be spun, and nus means that it has to be woven. But the bottom line is that we learn from here very important halachas in terms of what shatnez is. So if that's the case, I certainly need the word shatnez. So the Gemara says, elakula mi shatnez nafka. You're right. You want to know what's mufna? It's not Semru Fishtim. It's not Gedilim. It's not Yachtov. And it's not even Shatnez per se. Because Shatnez teaches me the halacha Shui Tavi V'no. So it's not extra. Everything is teaching me something. However, Kulam mi Shatnez Nafka. So what does that mean? If Shatnez is not what's extra, so does it mean Kulam mi Shatnez Nafka? So here too, there's Machlekes Rashi and Tois how to learn the Gemara. And I think the more posh pshat is actually Tosfos pshat. And that is, Tosfos says, that at the end of the day, if the Torah just wanted to tell me Shoy Tavi V'naz, it should have said Shoy Tavi V'naz. Shatnez is a b'zazah. It's a nice name that puts together, it captures the whole magnitude of what exactly it is. But at the end of the day, it's an acronym, it's a Rosh Teva, it's not clear what it is. Yeah, it's Shoy Tavi V'naz. It's like a Zadrosha. Torah should have said that. Why did Torah write the word shatnez? The chefs of the word shatnez is what's extra, and that's what's coming to teach me, that's what's mufna, to teach me the halacha of smuchim. Bottom line is, this concludes the very first part of the sugya of Asay Doichalois Asay, which took us through a daf and 2/3, and that is, we have the makar to Asay Doichalois Asay. We knew it before we started the sugya, and we know it now, Be'ezus Hashem, hopefully a little bit better after the sugya, and that is, it's learned out from smuchim. It says, Loisil B'Shatnez, Samachle, it says, Gdilam Tasala, from the smichas between these 2 parashas, we learn that Asay's Doichalois Asay. And the Gemara made a big deal about the fact that even Rabbi Yehuda, the one Tana in Shas, that doesn't darshan smuchim, but in Mishnah Torah, where it's muchach and or mufna, he does darshan smuchim, and the Gemara said that it just so happens that this is in Mishnah Torah, and it's muchach, and it's mufna, aliba the kuli alma, it's mufna, adkan, the first part of the sugya. But why are we talking about Asay Doichalois Asay? We just started Yevamos. Just started the halacha that in erva that falls liyibum, there's no yibum mechalitza. It's true for an erva, it's true for a tzaras erva, it's true for a tzaras erva. It's soifa olam. So why are we talking about Asay Doichalois Asay? It's because the Gemara in Daf Gimel Amud Beis brought the makar that in erva doesn't fall yibum. And the Gemara said it's learned out from a drasha. It says regarding the erva of achis isha, the isha lachoisa loisikach litzra the galas avasa aleh b'chayeh. And the Gemara said the word aleh is mufna. The word aleh is extra. And the Gemara said it's coming to teach me halacha that in erva doesn't fall yibum. What does aleh have to do with yibum? Because by yibum it says yevama yavay aleh. And just like Yevama Yava Aleh means Yibum, so too over here, Aleh means Yibum. And the Torah said, to teach me that even b'makom Yibum, there's not going to be a het, even that b'makom Erva, there's not going to be a mitzvah of Yibum, meaning even b'makom Yibum, there's going to be an Erva of Achois Isha. So the Gemara asked the Kasha, that time of the Kasa Rachman Aleh, it sounds like that the only reason that there's no Yibum by an erva is because I have a pasuk. Without a pasuk, I would have thought that there should be Yibum b'makom erva. For tomorrow, why? Why would I have thought that? Meaning, if the Torah would have never revealed to us this way or that way, what you do when there's a face-off between erva and Yibum, what would you have done? You would have applied all the klalei apsak. You would have gone through Shas and the Rishonim and the Achroinim and all the different poiskim, and you would have figured out what do you do in a situation like this. And the Gemara says the maskana would have been very, very simple. Yibum's a mitzvah essa. Arayis is a loisa asay sheyesh by kares. So really, your shaila would be: is asay doicha loisa asay sheyesh by kares or not? Says the Gemara, we know the rule. The rule is that although asay is doicha lois asay, but asay is not doicha lois asay sheyesh by kares, and it's for that reason. It's because it is Gemara's kasha that we triggered a whole sugya related to asay doicha lois asay. But we can't lose focus of why we got into this. We got into this because we're trying to be miyashiv this kasha, and that is that bishloim if asay would be doicha lois asay sheyesh by kares, so I would understand why you need Allah to teach me that there's no yibum by an erva. But based on the assumption that asay is not doicha lois asay sheyesh by kares, why do I need Allah? So really, if you think about what the Gemara did, the Gemara asked the kasha, and then the Gemara said, okay, you know what? Before we make any assumptions, before we get presumptions, let's learn the sugya a little bit. Minolon, how do you know that asay is doicha lois asay? Right, the Gemara said, Vesu, it's part of the narrative of the Gemara. How do you know that asay is doicha lois asay? So, the Gemara came out, Lamaskana, we know it from the fact that the mitzvah of tzitzis is doicha the lois asay of Shabbos. So the Gemara is going to continue now. Meaning, now that we have a little bit more information, we're more intelligent in the sugya of asay doicha lois asay, we know the makar to asay doicha lois asay. So now let's revisit the kasha that we started the sugya with, and let's see if the kasha is still a good kasha. So says the Gemara, great. We just found the makar that asay is doicha lois asay. Lois asay she'ech by kares, heichi ashkichon the dachi. But a makar that asay should be doicha lois asay she'ech by kares, where do you find it? Meaning, what's the whole makar? That I should need allowed to tell me that it's going to be also. Again, what's the makar says doicha lois asay from the lav of shan? Lav of shatnez is not a lav she'ish b'kar. Somebody with shatnez is not chayv kares. It's a lois asay. So for lois asay, you have a makar that is doichel. It's a lois asay sheshav b'kar. There's no she'elo. Yeah, it's a geherig lois asay, but not a lois asay she'ish b'kares. So what's the makar? So now the Gemara is going to try to prove maybe there actually is a makar, albeit a different makar, that asay can be doichel lois asay she'ish b'kares. Very geschmackig Gemara. Says the Gemara. Ash v'chitemo. I'll tell you. Nail me Mila. Maybe learn from Mila. Mila is doicha Shabbos. So if there's a baby that's 8 days old and it's Shabbos, the halacha is you do bris milah on Shabbos. Now really the fact that milah is doicha Shabbos is a chiddush. Why is it a chiddush? Because when the moil does bris milah, he's really being over on Issa Shabbos. Big machlokes Rishonim and Masechta Shabbos, a paragraph less the middle, what exactly the Issa Shabbos is. Different shittas. But one thing is clear, that when the moil does bris milah, he's being mechal Shabbos. Now Shabbos is a lois aseh, sheyesh by misas bezin, it's a lois aseh, sheyesh by kares. The teretz is, it says in the Torah that milah is doicha. So L'chura says the Gemara, let's learn from the fact that milah is doicha Shabbos, that aseh could always be doicha lois aseh, sheyesh by kares. So the Gemara says, v'chitei min elef min milah, but milah shkein nichesru aleh, sholish esrei brisais. Milah is not just a mitzvah. Milah is a mitzvah where the Torah was keres bris, that's why it's called bris milah, and not just a bris. Yud Gimel Brisais, 13 times it says bris in the parasha of Milah. So you see from there that it's a very, very chomer mitzvah. Maybe the mitzvah of Milah could be doicha lois aseh sheyesh by kares. And you're right, if you could find another mitzvah that was nichresu aleh Yud Gimel Brisais, there is none by the way, but if you could find another one, then enochinami. But you have no right that a regular aseh. So the Gemara says, me Pesach. Maybe learn it out from the Karban Pesach. The Karban Pesach was brought Erev Pesach, Yud Nisan. What happens if Yud Nisan falls out on Shabbos? So it's a Geshmak Sugya, Mesachtes Psachim, Daf Samach Vav, Maisa with Hillel and the Bnei Bezeir. The Maskana is that Pesach was Doicha Shabbos. Now, to bring the Karban Pesach involves Melecha Shabbos, the Shchita, the Aktara. They were bona fide melachas that were done when the Karban Pesach was brought. Yet Pesach was Doicha Shabbos. Shabbos is a lois aseh sheyesh by kares. So let's bring a riot from Pesach. The Gemara says you can't learn from Pesach either. Because Maila Pesach shekain kares. If somebody doesn't bring the Karban Pesach, he's chayiv kares. So Pesach is an aseh. It's the rear aseh. Pesach and Milah, but it's a rear aseh where you find that the mitzvah aseh has kares. So you have a raya that an aseh sheyesh by kares can be doicha lois sheyesh by kares, which makes sense, by the way. The two kares is not to cancel each other out. Aseh is doicha lois aseh. So in Milah, you're going to be done. But you can't prove from here that a regular aseh can be doicha lois sheyesh by kares. The Gemara says, mitamid. Maybe learn it from the Karban Tamid. The Karban Tamid was a carbon that was brought pamayim bahava every single day in the Beis Hamikdash, tmidim kisidra, in the morning and in the evening, and it was brought even on Shabbos. Now again, you bring the Karban Tamid just like you bring the Karban Pesach. It involves doing malacha, and still you see it was doicha. The Karban Tamid doesn't involve kares. It wasn't nichresu aleh Yud Gimel Brisais, and still you see it's psukim in the Torah that the Tamid was doicha. But the Gemara says, "Mala Tamid, you can't bring a raya from the Karban Tamid. Shekain tader." The reason is because the Karban Tamid was tader. It had the maila of tader, right? When someone does something b'tdirus, it's a maila. It's a maila in the world of Musar and Machshava. It's a maila in halach as well. The fact that it was every single day is tader, and therefore it was brought even on Shabbos. But you have no raya to say that something that's not tader could necessarily be done every single day, and it can be done in all situations, and it could even be doicha a lois aseh sheyesh by kares. So the Gemara says that it's true. There are three Mekairis in the Torah to an idea that I say is Doicha Lois Asay Sheish by Garas. You find it by the fact that Mila is Doicha Shabbos, Pesach is Doicha Shabbos, and Tamid is Doicha Shabbos. Three festive geschmacka in Yonim. But to say you can't learn from either one. You can't learn from Mila because Nichus Olay Gimel Bris. You can't learn from Pesach, Karas, and you can't learn from the Tamid because it's Tamid. So the Gemara says, Michad Olayas. It's true. You can't learn from one individually, but maybe you can learn from two. Meaning, maybe you can merge two together, and using a Tzad Shava between two, maybe you'll have them a Karas. The Gemara says, Mehei Tesi. Which two do you want? Milo Pesach. Maybe learn from Milo and Pesach. Meaning, you're going to tell me I can't learn from Milo because it's Nichus Olay Yud Gimel Bris. Pesach Teichiach, that doesn't have Yud Gimel Brisas. You're going to tell me you can't learn from Pesach because it's Karis. Milo Teichiach. Milo is also Karis. And Mar says it right away. Shkein Karis. No, that doesn't work because the same Chumrah that Pesach had, which is Karis, Milo also has its Karis. And Mar says maybe me Pesach v'Tamid. Maybe learn from Pesach v'Tamid. What are you going to tell me? You can't learn from Pesach because it's Karis. I'll tell you Tamid Teichiach. Tamid doesn't have Karis, and you'll tell me Malat Tamid Shkein Tader. Pesach was brought once a year. The Pesach wasn't Tamid. But Shkein Tzarich Givaya. At the end of the day, Pesach and Tamid were both Karbanas. They're both brought for the Eibishter. So you're right. Meaning you're getting closer. You see that something that's Tzarich Givaya maybe. Asay could be doicha lois asay sheish by cars, but you don't see that every asay could be doicha lois asay sheish by cars. So the Gemara says maybe me mila v'tamid, learn it from mila and tamid. Malam mila shekain nichrasu ala yud gimel brisais, or malam mila shekain yesh by cars tamid teichach. Malam tamid shekain tader mila teichach. Mila is not tader. What about the fact that once a person has bris milah, he's mekayim a mitzvah every single second that he has the bris milah? Interesting. But the Gemara says that l'chura, so the tzad hashava between milah and tamid, maybe that's going to be the makar. But the Gemara says no, because malam milah v'tamid can yesha lifnei adibur. They both had something in common. They were both mitzvahs that predated Matan Torah. Mitzvah milah was given to Avram Avinu, and the mitzvah of tamid was also before Matan Torah. And the Gemara says that's not a Aliba the Kuliyama, Abba Aliba the Mandama, Oilish Kuvi Yizaba Midbar, Oilish Tamirab. There is a Mandama that holds that when the Yidden brought the carbon oil in the Midbar, it's referring to by Har Sinai. By Har Sinai, the Pasuk says the Yidden brought Shlomim and Oilas. We just learned this in Masechtas Chagid, there was Machais B'Shaim B'Sil, what exactly those carbonas were. There's a Mandama that holds that the oil was a carbon tamid. So if the oil was a carbon tamid, that means the oil was also brought before Matan Torah. Right before Matan Torah, but it was brought before Matan Torah. Mila for sure was there before Matan Torah. So Aliba that man the Amar anyways, you wouldn't have a makar that I say could be doicha. And the Gemara says that once we go down this road and we say that the fact that this mitzvah was l'fnei adibur, that's a reason that maybe it's a more starka say it could be doicha, but there's no right that another say could be doicha is in Mikulunami. Once we go down that road, all three are dead on arrival. You can't learn from Mila because Mila was l'fnei adibur, was given to Avram Avinu. Can't learn from Pesach. Then at Kar Pesach and Mitzrayim, and you can't learn from Tamid either, according to the Mandama that holds that they brought it by Har Sinai. So the Gemara said, the bottom line is says the Gemara, that even though there are attempts that you can make to try to find a makar in the Torah to the fact that I say would maybe be doicha lois I say sheish by kares abalachara iyun, you can't learn. Not from the fact that Milah is Leicha Shabbos, not from the fact that Carbon Pesach is Leicha Shabbos, not from the fact that Carbon Tom is Leicha Shabbos. Even if you want to pull out a Tzad HaShava, you can. If the bottom line is that you cannot learn out from any one of the three or from the three combined, which leaves us hanging for right now, and that is that why do I need Allah to teach me that there's no Yibum by an Erva? L'chura, even without a pasuk telling me that there's no Yibum by an Erva, I would anyways know there's no Yibum by an Erva, because Yibum is a mitzvah's essa, and Arayas are lois asay sheyesh by kares, and asay is not doicha lois asay sheyesh by kares, and even though asay is doicha lois asay, and we know it from the smuchim between loisil b'shatnis and gedilim tasalach, which is true aliba the kuli almi, even the tanam that don't darshan smuchim, but the smuchim they're going to darshan. But the bottom line is that at the end of the day, that's only true with regards to a regular lois asay, but a lois asay sheyesh by kares not. And if that's the case, we leave today's daf exactly where we started yesterday's daf, and that is, why do I need a pasuk of Allah to tell me that there's no yibum by an erva? Even without a pasuk, I would know based on gedarim of tchiyah that there's no way that it should be shaykh to do yibum with an erva.